All right. Welcome back to Waste Some Time with Jason Green. I am Jason Green, bringing you brand new interviews right here on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe, click on the Patreon link. You know the drill. Anyway, today uh, we have royalty with us, the Metal Queen from Canada. If you're watching here in America, you may know the name Lee Aaron, and you may be wondering why Lee didn't break through bigger in America. And some of you are fans who've been keeping up with her music and probably want to know what's next. She has a 15th studio album available right now. Can you believe 15 records? It's called Elevate. The link is in the description. Lee is going to be here to talk about all that and more right after this. Just wanna waste some time with you. Sometimes it seems too good to be true. Nobody I'd rather waste time with than you. Please welcome Lee Aaron. Hi, Lee.
How you doing?
Good. We're going to pretend that we didn't just have all kinds of technical problems, and but we've got it worked out, and I'm so glad you're here. And I did say I remember uh, being a kid and people telling me about Lee Aaron, and you were playing in New York. I think it was the Cat Club, and uh, and we all kind of wondered, why don't we see Lee Aaron videos on MTV like we see Lita Ford or Doro Pesh? And we'll talk about some of those things because I know you have
Sure.
an answer. But I want to start with you. You grew up in Ontario, Canada, and I think you would be described as a theater kid, right? You were singing in shows.
Totally. That was pretty much my background. Got very involved in theater from a very young age, all throughout my schooling years, and quite intensely involved when I was in high school. The school that I went to just outside Toronto was fairly renowned for their musical theater productions. And so, yeah, that was kind of my background. But when I was 15 years old, I was performing in a musical theater production, and a bass player from a local high school band saw me. And because his brother was actually doing, set deck and various things in the production I was in, and heard me sing and went, wow, that girl's got a really powerful voice, and invited me to come and audition for their band. And that's how I ended up in a rock and roll band. My father drove me to the audition, and he's like, I'm not letting my 15-year-old girl go to a basement with a bunch of boys. Um, and although I don't know that they were particularly keen initially on having a girl singer in their band, I ended up getting the gig because they couldn't find anyone who could sing any better. And I ended up in my very first high school band when I was 15 years old as well. And that band was comprised of sort of an A team from the music program at a neighboring high school as well as my high school, and we all came together and formed this band. Called it Lee Aaron.
Yeah, I found it interesting. To me, Lee Aaron's a little bit like Alice Cooper. Alice Cooper was the name of a band, but he of course became Alice Cooper. Well, Lee Aaron is not your birth name, but the name of the band when you joined was Lee Aaron, and you took on that name. Can you tell me first of all, where did they come up with Lee Aaron?
Well, it's almost embarrassing because it's not that great a story. We were kids, and we were in high school, of course, and we were just, we wanted a name like Max Webster or Jethro Tull or Alice Cooper, or, so many artists throughout time have, David Bowie, Elton John, Tina Turner. They're all not their real names. And so we just started throwing, pop culture references into a hat that were relevant to us at that time as kids in the 70s. Lee Jeans, Aaron Spelling was a producer, and, a television producer. We just like, it's pretty dumb, actually. We just started throwing a bunch of pop culture references into a hat. We pulled out a couple, and we were like, Aaron Lee. Nah, Lee Aaron. We went Lee Aaron. Yeah, that sounds pretty catchy. And that's how the name. Okay, we all agreed that was the name of the band.
I think
And
that's actually a great story.
okay.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I mean, I don't think anyone would have guessed that. And talk about two. pop culture legends, Lee Jeans. At the time, he was probably known for Charlie's Angels or one of the nighttime shows. This is before his 90210 and all those things. So it's interesting that that's where the name came from. And did you know all along, I'm going to take the name and be Lee Aaron?
Not at all. Not at all. I actually played keyboards and saxophone
Mhm.
and was only one of the singers in the initial incarnation of the Lee Aaron band. My guitarist George Bernhardt sang probably 15% of the material at that time. So it was a little more Fleetwood Mackey back then. I wasn't really the front person, but our first manager who took us on when I had just graduated. I don't even think I'd turned 18 yet. Put us out on the road when we were kids and pulled me out from behind the keyboards. He said, you need to be the front person of this band because, you've got the look. And I really didn't have any sort of stage moves or anything at the time. And he took me to see uh, the movie The Rose with Bette Midler. Do you remember that?
Sure.
And he said, I want you to try to fashion yourself after, I want you to study her and see what she's doing in this movie. And of course, I'd come from theater. So this was totally in my wheelhouse to be able to do this. And so a lot of my um, stage persona initially was fashioned after her character in that movie. And eventually, about a few months in, we had gone over quite well at a lot of the nightclubs we were playing, and a lot of them wanted rebookings, and they said, yes, bring that sweet Lee Aaron girl back. We want to book her again. And it just gradually, over the first couple of years of being on the road, started becoming synonymous with myself. People started calling me Lee Aaron, and that's kind of how it happened initially.
Yeah, and people have been calling you Lee Aaron ever since. Uh, I think maybe some more important people in your household will call you mom. Uh,
Yeah.
do the kids know that you're the metal queen?
Well, they do now. They really didn't have any concept when they were really little kids. I was just the lady making mac and cheese and peanut butter sandwiches and taking them to the park, of course.
Hmm.
But now that they're teens, which they are now, uh, they've got certainly more of an idea. It's funny because both my daughter and my son have recently, they're just at that age now where they've started have their first, high school boyfriend and girlfriend. And um, the funny thing is they both came home after the first, dinner with the parents, and they like, oh, mom, my girlfriend's parents are actually big fans of yours. And so it was a little bit of an eye opener, I think, for them to realize that, you know, um, that that they knew made that connection with me and had bought my records. So they're starting to realize a little more. And we've taken them to more shows lately. And especially last summer, we did a few shows in Ontario, and they were a bit overwhelmed when they saw, like, we played a couple of big street festivals and there were thousands and thousands of people, and the security wouldn't let our children get close to us, never mind the audience. And they were kind of taken aback by that. They were going, wow, like, all of these people are trying to, like, grab you and touch you. And it was a little overwhelming for them. I don't think they really had an understanding until that point in time, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, I'm sure mom suddenly became much cooler, when you realize that all these people love you. Your daughter is involved in music, right?
She totally is. We're very, very proud of her. She just auditioned last year there's a very renowned theater program here at Capilano University, and you have to audition to become part of it. And she auditioned against about 500 people. They take about 20, and she got in. So she's very much entrenched in that this year. And she's also going to be involved in something called Theater Under the Stars here throughout the summer, which is a production that runs all summer long in Stanley Park here in Vancouver, it's sort of the summertime production to see if you're downtown Vancouver. So yeah, she's sort of following in my footsteps, although you'd never be able to convince her of that really, because she thinks by doing theater she's really rebelling against her rock and roll mom, but she doesn't really realize that those were sort of my stepping stones as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, she's fortunate to have someone like yourself who's seen the good and the bad and the ugly of the music industry to guide her. You've had some managers that you didn't think maybe gave you the best advice, especially as a young woman in this business who just off the the truck, so to speak, and out on the road. I know that the We magazine that you posed for became quite a controversy, and I think. I mean, it's said that you sort of regretted it or felt that it might have hurt your career a little bit, or people taking you serious.
Well, yeah, I would never ever recommend that my daughter do something like
Right.
that, ever in a million years. You know, I I've only started to talk about this recently.
Mhm.
Um, and I'm actually in the process of writing some memoirs where I go into a lot more detail and a lot more depth about it. So I'm not really here to badmouth anybody. Some of the choices, well, I'll suffice to say this: some of the choices that I was influenced to make as a very, very young girl, again, fresh off the turnip truck into the music industry.
Mhm.
Um, I didn't have a lot of um, other experiences to be able, as a barometer to be able to gauge it from. And some of these choices that I was influenced to make when I was young were presented to me as though this was the way it was done. These were the best choices to make. Um, as I, of course, evolved and matured throughout my years in the industry, in hindsight, looking back, I go, that so was not a good choice. And had I had any uh, concept when I was 19 years old when I did that, of the legacy it would have created for me, or the obstacles it would have created for me for being taken seriously as a musician, I would have never done it. 100% would have never done it. So again, I go into a lot more detail in my memoirs explaining the circumstances surrounding that choice. Um, but no, it made it very difficult for very many years for me to be taken seriously. I got into the music industry because I love music, and I started out far more as a musician than a front person as a singer,
Mhm.
and it evolved into that. But yeah, that definitely, I was treated as a sexual novelty for a while when I was young, and that was 100% not the reason I got into the music industry in the first place. And it took quite a few years to of persistence and hard work and songwriting. It took till my sixth album before people started realizing I actually wrote all my own material, you know? And these days, of course, I produce my own records, and I've,
Well,
I'm 100,
and your
yeah.
music is so different too. I mean, you have jazz records, you had a Christmas record, you've got blues. It's not just the heavy metal music that people knew, but you do still play that for the fans who want to hear it, which is great. For those who might not be familiar, We Magazine was an English sort of adult magazine, and but a lot of rockers were in it. Mark Weiss, the legendary photographer, took photos for that magazine, but they would have topless women in it. Um, and as you described, you had a manager who convinced you that this was a good idea, or this is how it was done, which I don't really think it was. And I think by today's
No.
standards, no one would let their young artists uh, begin their career that way. And so it is something that maybe made you a sex symbol that made people not realize um, that there's more to this music. And so I took the Lee Aaron deep dive, and I was going through your career, and I was looking at some of the videos, and some of it was so funny to me in some ways. I said some of this is like Manowar, the especially the loincloth, and so some of these decisions, I don't think that you would wear the loincloth today. I don't know. There it is. This is a metal queen right here, and Were people guiding you, telling you this is what you need to be doing?
Well, my very first manager had a lot of fantastic ideas and some that weren't that fantastic. Let's put it that way. Um, his fantastic ideas were, we're not getting the attention in Canada that I feel you deserve. Let's go to England. Let's go showcase at the Marquee Club. He found a writer from Kerrang magazine that championed my cause when I was young, and made me a centerfold in Kerrang magazine and did a feature article. This helped me gain notoriety outside of Canada. These were all great ideas. They really were. But we also went down to Los Angeles, showcased at the Troubadour. We at that time went and toured Universal Studios on a day off, and he saw the Conan the back then the installation was the Conan the Barbarian exhibit, because that movie had just come out, and so light bulbs, I think, went off for him. He went, what if we did this but did it in a female way? And I was like, oh, well, okay, these aren't the stage clothes I normally wear. So I basically showed up for this photo shoot, and back then, how do I explain it? Record companies were investing so much money in their artists, and there was not only the artist didn't just walk in and decide what to wear. There was an art director and a wardrobe person. And I sort of walked in and this was all set up, and they're like, this is what's going to happen. And I was so young. I just thought, I guess this is how it's done.
Mhm.
The greatest kudo for me in my career is that I survived all of that. And I got to move forward and move on and take control of my life and my career, and eventually move past that, gain musical respect, and everything that I have done, post the year 2000 has been completely of my own, my own volition, my own artistic vision. And the albums that I think I'm probably obviously the most proud of are the ones that I've done most recently, and that I've produced myself and had complete control over. And yeah,
It's
so we've
amazing that
like,
you get to do that. Not everybody does, and some people quit. You're a pioneer of this. I talk about things that are happening. We're talking about 1982. That time frame. A lot of people that get spoke about in your peers, or a lot of them came later or weren't doing this type of thing, and so maybe we weren't as aware here in the United States. But you were setting a path that a lot of people were going to attempt to do as well. I will tell you, one of the videos I really love is that you, instead of doing a typical video where it's a scantily clad woman, you paid equal attention to all the men. Uh, uh, it was like we're gonna flip it for a second, and so it's gratuitous bicep shots, and I thought it was so funny. And today, a video like that, everyone would understand. But I bet you at the time they didn't.
well, Body Rock, which was we're talking, everything we've previously just discussed is all my early
Right.
inception of my career. Body Rock was actually my most successful record here in Canada. It went double platinum. And at that time, again, I was wrestling back control of my image and my musical direction and everything that I wanted to do. And that album, uh, "What You Do to My Body," which was the first single, was chosen as the um, first single, and I chose to work with this video director named Don Allen here in Canada, very talented individual, and I suggested to him at that time. I said, what if we, because it, this whole rampant 80s sexism was still happening. All of the Bon Jovi, the Wasp, the Motley Crue, all of those videos where it was very, very common to gratuitously have scantily clad women parading about to make these men look more virile as rock stars. And I thought, wouldn't it be cool if we did the opposite? If we flipped that on its head and hired a bunch of really attractive young men to come in here and be, beefcake in the
Hmm.
video. But to do it with a nod and a wink and a sense of humor, so that it's not interpreted as being very over sexualizing men, if you understand what I mean. So we did that with a bit of a nudge and a wink. And I mean, we got guys holding puppies, come on, and
Hmm.
babies in the video, and it was extremely well received. And it accomplished exactly at that time what I had hoped to accomplish, which was, again, let's flip this whole sexuality thing on its head and approach it with a sense of humor and a fun hard rock pop song, which What You Do to My Body was.
Yeah, and that's sort of, I'm jumping around. That's later '80s,
Yeah,
coming on to the '90s. But so I teased a little bit in the beginning about why we didn't get to hear you so much in the United States, and I know that
sure.
one of the reasons is that your record label, Attic Records, right? They had you under contract, and they were gonna in Canada, it was a Canadian record label, and you were the big star, and they wanted to have an American division of the label. You can stop me if I'm off on this. And they were sort of holding you to be the star of their American label. Is that right?
Well, that was one of the reasons.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, it was difficult because on my biggest records, which was um, Body Rock and Some Girls Do in '91, again, I'd had multi-platinum success in Canada with those albums. And Attic Records, the president of Attic at the time was very invested in opening up Attic America and was hoping to hold me as a premier artist to be on the label. For one reason or another, that ended up not happening. They never quite got their finances together and got enough investment on board. And by the time they were willing to renegotiate to have me be on an American label, once the sort of the bloom of your successes in the downward swing, which it was at that point, my biggest successes in Canada had happened, and I was now moving on to make the next record. People weren't as interested. So let's suffice to say that one of the probably the main and only reason you didn't see me throughout the United States in a bigger way at that time was simply contractual. I was not able to sign a deal with a major American label, which I had had interest off and
Yeah,
on over the
they wanted
years
you. Yeah.
throughout that time. But the record deal that I had signed with my Canadian label in the early '80s um, was they owned me, they owned my worldwide rights, and I was not able to sign. It was up to the label, all of my foreign licensing agreements, and America was the elusive one that never happened for us. I had record deals everywhere in the world except the States.
It's
So
yeah, it's a strange thing when you have an international career, because a lot of the bands from the United States were big in the United States. They didn't do so well overseas. Maybe they could go to Japan, maybe they can go to the UK a little bit, but when you're an international artist like yourself, you can play in so many markets, and it's strange because you're in all these markets, but it just never took off here in the United States. People know you; they call you a cult.
do they?
That's what I've heard. And I think that it's trying to explain why people didn't see you, because again, I mentioned Doro Pesh and Lita Ford. MTV was so into marketing that style. You had the songs, you had the look, and as you said, it was only getting better as your career was going. '89 to '91, that's peak time for that genre, on MTV here in America. Instead,
Totally.
we missed out on it. You're going to be on the upcoming Monsters of Rock cruise, And I work with Stephen Piercy from Rat, and I'm going to be there. And when I looked at the list, one of the first names I saw was Lee Aaron. And as an American who was born in New York City, lives in Las Vegas, I may never get a chance to see Lee Aaron unless I go to Canada. And so when I made my list of who I wanted to see, I said, I've got to catch it. And I think for a lot of people on that boat from different walks of life will be excited to get to see you play the songs. And you make sure that you give people a little bit of nostalgia and play the songs, because I know for a little while you took off. You were a parent. You had other things to do, and maybe you didn't think at this point in your life you'll still be singing some of those fun songs, but people love them.
Well, yeah, I mean, I took a hiatus, obviously. Most people know that, to raise a family for about 10 years. And I came back in 2016 with a brand new album called Fire and Gasoline. And I followed that up with Diamond Baby Blues in 2018, a live album live in Germany in 2019. 2020, we put out our Christmas album. 2021, we put out another new original album called Radio On, and followed that up with Elevate in 2022. So I feel like I'm experiencing a little bit of a career resurgence, which is and a new creative phase of my career, which is exciting, and which also, again, you talk about the cult status. The beautiful thing about cult status is that people that love cult artists also love to buy product. They love vinyl.
Yes.
They love, and so I have been able to manage, unlike a pop one hit wonder, maintain a fairly steady career throughout the years, because I am always offered a record deal somewhere, because people know, the labels know that I'm good for at least 5,000 albums, like um, 5 to 10,000 albums in sales. So this is a good thing. And um, in our current show, of course, believe it, we bring the nostalgia, because we know how much, I know how meaningful those early songs are to people. So we go back, we revisit stuff from the early days. We play Metal Queen, we play things from that album. We dabble in on the Powerline album. We bring the best from What You Do to the Body Rock album. Some girls do. And then we get to sneak in a few of the new songs as
Right.
well, which, again, like, I have a very, very dedicated core fan base that are buying those new albums as well. So we feel like an obligation to play those. So it's really a beautiful, I feel like, well balanced, fun rock and roll set. So I'm excited. I'm very excited for the cruise. It's going to be my first time to get out
Okay.
there and play.
I think you're gonna love it.
Not only to play on a cruise, but to actually be on a cruise. So I'm like, guess I'll be bringing my gravel. I hope I don't get seasick.
Your drummer is your husband, so you're
Yes,
keeping it in the family. Do the kids come on the cruise too, or this is just a parent's getaway?
it's just a parent's getaway. As much as I would have loved to bring my children, they're in some intense schooling years right now, and they both were like, "Mom, we can't. We have midterms. We're coming up." And I'm like, "Okay, I understand." And they're finally old enough to be left alone. So,
Right.
but yeah, it'll be a nice escape as well for us.
Yeah, and you reach so many people. Music has become so much more international as it's easier to get music. Maybe these things like Spotify, they haven't figured out how to pay artists correctly. But if between that and
Yeah.
YouTube, if you want to hear new music or relive old music that you missed, now's the time to do it. So it's not an excuse anymore. Well, I didn't hear Lee Aaron on the Headbangers. Well, that doesn't exist. And that's why I like to bring attention to artists. In Canada, everyone's heard these stories already, but here, let people go check out some of your music. Check out Elevate, which is the new album. The record before that, we had the pandemic; things were hard to tour and promote. This is the new one, and people can check it out. They can also check out the single "Rock Bottom Revolution." There's a cool video for that, which is on YouTube. So as I was saying, there's no excuse not to find music. Your website also, if you're a fan of Lee Aaron, you can deep dive into all kinds of cool information, but also cool merchandise and things. as you said, there's fans who want physical media and collectibles, and you have all those things at leearon.com. And again, the link for Elevate is in the description, so people can order that now as well.
Yeah. Um, yeah, it's just, for me, like I said, it's just an exciting time for me and the band because we sort of feel like we're enjoying a new creative renaissance in the phase of the Lee Aaron career. And I have a fantastic band. I have some of Canada's best players. I have a gentleman named Sean Kelly, who's my guitarist and one of my co-writers, who has played in Helix, Coney Hatch, and Nelly Furtado. He's a full-time member of the Lee Aaron band right now. My bass player, Dave Reimer, used to play with Bryan Adams and Barney Bentall. And of course, John Cody is my husband, and he's the drummer. I got a great band. It's going to be a great cruise. It's going to be a fantastic couple of shows. And hopefully we'll all get suntans as well.
Yes, and then after that, there's a Canada tour, a Canadian tour, and people can on those dates are on your website as well. What are the chances we see you in the United States one day? Is it just too expensive and too difficult to do?
Well, again, it's I'm kind of past without sounding elitist, I'm kind of past the like small nightclub portion of my career.
Mhm.
I don't know if I'd really want to come to the States and play clubs. And again, like it would be almost like rebuilding because I never had a huge US release. Whereas I can stay in Europe and Canada and I play fairs, festivals, big casinos.
Casinos, yeah.
Um, um, so I would love to come to the States, but it would be a matter of maybe getting on something like Rocklahoma or one of those big festivals that has an appreciation for Canadian acts and brings us down there. Or maybe just coming down and showcasing maybe at the Whiskey or somewhere like that in LA, doing that. Um, because at this point in time, I'm able to sort of maintain quite a fairly lucrative career playing throughout Europe and Canada. Again, I'd love to come down and do some showcasing in the States, and perhaps after the cruise, that's going to be a reality. So
Yeah,
let's
I think so
hold
because
tight.
you're going to be in a lot of people's eyes. The people, Larry Moran, who puts on the cruise, also does the Monsters on the Mountain festival, among other things. So I think maybe people will see it and say, you know what, this is also these festivals, these cruises, and these type of things. That you're running out of acts, from that time period, and so they like to find people who haven't played a million times, and here in the States, and you're one of them. I know I sound like a selfish American. We like to make it all about us. What are you coming here? Whereas in your mind, you're thinking, well, where were you when I had records? Old records. So, but I think people are going to love seeing you live. I'm excited, and then also check out the music. It's good stuff. You talk about taking control of your own music. Sometimes people say, I took control of my music, and they make stuff that sounds like home recordings. This does not. You have such a great sound. This new record is really enjoyable. And I think the old fans will like it, but I think a lot of new fans will like it as well.
Well, I have to thank you for that compliment. That's lovely for you to say. I really like the last couple of albums. And again, like I did mention, they were produced by me.
Hmm.
However, I have to give a big shout out for Mike Fraser, who was our engineer and mixer. Mike Fraser, if you're not familiar with his work, has worked with everybody from Aerosmith to Bon Jovi to Bryan Adams to most recently AC/DC, Power Up. He is the mixer. And it was really just a matter of me phoning. He actually is located in Vancouver as well, and phoning him up and saying, hey, Mike Fraser, how come we've never worked together? He said, I'm a big fan. Let's work together. And I mean, that is a huge reason why our albums sound fantastic as well, because we had a world-class professional at the helm behind the mixing board as well. So, yeah.
Yeah.
But yes, Yeah.
Yeah, you don't.
Go ahead.
The engineers and things don't always get enough credit. Sometimes when a record has a really great sound, sometimes a person behind it doesn't get that kind of credit. It's not uh, a glamorous job. But yeah, the records sound great, and I do think people will enjoy it. I want to remind everybody that Lee Aaron's new album Elevate is available everywhere right now. You can click on the link in the description. You can go to leeaaron.com, even easier, and support music. And we look forward to seeing you, Lee. I can tell you that I definitely think you have to have that memoir, um, uh, a biopic, a documentary. There's so much that we just glossed over. But to your career as a young woman starting out to now where you're in control is such a great story. And I think a motivational story and also a little bit of a cautionary tale about when you step into a business and you've survived to tell those stories.
Yeah, don't leap head first when you're 18 years old.
Yeah,
But
not everything is a good idea.
you know, with that said, experience makes you rich, struggle makes you strong, and I still have a lot to write about many, many moons later. So, out of bad things come good things. Well, let's just leave it on that. I'm a very positive person. I don't have regrets. I think everything is a learning curve in life, and I'm grateful for all of my experience because it's made me a much richer, much wiser, much more interesting person. So there you go.
I think that's a great attitude and a way to view life. Lee, thank you so much for your time. Like I said, I look forward to. I think we're about 2 or 3 weeks away. We'll see you soon out on the middle of the ocean. Who knew? I went from New York City, couldn't see Lee Aaron then. Now I'll see you somewhere between Haiti and the Dominican Republic.
Sounds great.
Thank you, Lee. Make sure
Great,
you
great.
guys subscribe and check out Lee's music.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
leeaaron.com. And yeah, great talking to you, Jason. See you on the
Thank you,
cruise.
Lee.
I look forward
You
to
too.
saying hi.